Hello and welcome back to the garage again. This week we're going to focus on the engine, the big hole, the problem that started all this, and we're going to do some assessment to see what parts we can use or if it's all just trash. And hopefully we will be building a new engine very shortly. So, quick recap. We have this big hole in the engine block where parts left the engine to go find new exciting adventures. It's been hammered beyond belief. It's really broken inside. Later we're gonna see when we open it up, see what's actually broken. The rest of the engine seems to be fine. Except it's probably full of metal filings and small parts that has been running around inside the engine. So we're going to tear it down from the top to the bottom in that order, just because that's the easiest way to do it without spreading parts all over the garage and spreading like metal filing filled oil and gunk everywhere. So the first parts we will be removing is the intake manifold, because that holds almost all of the electronics and it holds injectors and a lot of things. So you can get that away. The engine will clean up and it will be easier to see what we have to deal with, and we can start guessing in what condition the engine might be in. If you're rebuilding an engine like this, you're going to find all manners of connectors, like hoses and everything. And if you can, mark it, because it's going back together again, and you will have to find out how. And you think, it's okay, I will remember this one. You won't. So, after the removal of the intake manifold and some fiddly bits, we now have the entire wiring of the engine on the floor. Some additional components have been removed, but it's mostly just the intake manifold and the wiring. To be able to remove the head, we have to remove the valve cover, which hides camshafts and valves. And you do it on the Toyotas by removing these, which are actually huge nuts mounted through the entire head. You will see. These nuts are actually mounted on tubes, and at the bottom of these tubes we have the spark plugs. And these are usually not very tight fitting. But usually the gaskets are very dry, so it sticks anyway to the head. As you can see, the engine we're building is a twin cam engine. We have one cam and we have the second one over there. But it's driven by single pulley because it has a sprocket drive in between them inside, which means you cannot adjust them individually. You have to do it with just one gear, which is not optimal for performance, but it's much cheaper to build and it has fewer moving parts. When removing anything with bearings, like these or these, these. Well, these actually also. If you're removing anything with bearings, try to remove it in an orderly fashion so every piece goes back to where it comes from. Just don't start flinging everything in a bucket or just throwing it away. So now taking each of these small bearing houses the same direction it was on the engine and putting it over there so I can see them in order. So when it comes to removing head studs, I have this massive breakers bar because they're usually quite tight, and with a bit of leverage it becomes quite an easy job. So here comes the big reveal. Let's remove the head. And you should never hammer at engine parts, but a tap makes it easier to remove. Let's just see how bad it is. Off with its head, stuck on a bolt. This one seems to be resisting. Oh, no, it doesn't. Let's try that again. Another one resisting. Well, it's easier if you remove all the bolts beforehand. Well, this is embarrassing. I'm going to do this all day. So let's inspect and see what the damage might be. Well, it's not really bad. If we come over here and look down the cylinder, you can see it isn't really smashed. I don't see any dents or injuries. Let's look at the head part. So these are the combustion chambers. That's where all the magic happens. That's the combustion chamber. These are exhaust valves. That's where the gases go out, and this is the intake valves where they come in. And AutoZoom is messing it up. And over here we have a spark plug. I almost expected the spark plug to be squashed and something to be broken, but it seems remarkably okay. Since the upper part of this engine did not give us any clues to cause of death for this poor engine, we'll now open up the bottom end to see if we can figure out what actually happened. So after removing the 18 bolts that hold the crankcase, let's see if we can crack it open without damaging anything. They're usually quite stuck. That sounds like something's giving up. Hooray! It's opening. Let's watch the carnage. First of all, water comes out. Never a good sign. You should never have water in your crankcase, because that means it had taken the place of oil that should have been there. Let's see. What do we have here? A sump. It's full of blackish goo and loose bolts. That's never good. This is the oil pickup line. That's the funnel that picks up the oil to the oil pump that hides over here and pumps it throughout the engine. Let's just remove a few more things and look at the horror that awaits us. After removing a number of screws, we can just take off the oil funnel and the splash guard, and here we can see some horrible damages. Oh, this is gruesome. you know what you're looking at, it's terrible. See here? That's one of the bolts that's supposed to hold the arms that go from this bearing up to the piston. There's nothing left. It's smashed to pieces. Here's another piece, and hard to see, but in here there's supposed to be a bearing. There's supposed to be other materials there, but there is no bearing. It's just more smashed pieces. And you can see here I have like scratches and tears where material has been bouncing around inside the crankcase. And up at the cylinder head there's more shaft pieces broken off. And if I move the camera, you can see through there. If I point right there, that's actually the hole through the engine. Woohoo! Where the piece is left. But the oil pump, that's actually the part out here. That piece seems to be intact and not broken. So I might be able to reuse most of these pieces, which is actually like the poor sump and pickup and things over there, and an oil pump and some things from over here, and the rest will be new pieces. So, what did we learn from this engine autopsy session? Well, the old engine is broken. It's really dead, and it fell apart. But I can still reuse most of the parts in a new engine block, and I have new bearings, new seals, and everything. So over the next few episodes, we're going to rebuild the engine from the bottom up, and it will hopefully end with a nice, new, good-looking engine that works without holes.
Ow.